Merci.
Albert, what was your beginning point for this project?
Well, at the beginning, the film, it shouldn't be a film. In fact, it was a commission of the Pompidou Museum to do it as a performance inside the museum. It was a longer story 4 years ago, and Jean-Pierre should already perform the Louis XIV inside a cage, a crystal cage hanging on the main room of the museum. Well, there was a lot of budget problems because it was very expensive, and then, okay, we forget a little bit. It was cancelled at the end. We forget a little bit during some years, and then we decide to keep on, but in a more classical format. It's a feature film, but keeping a little bit these original roots of unity of space, time, action. To really focus on the last 15 days and to really live, in present time, these iconic, moments of the past. Not just to, make a cliche about, I don't know, political subject or about issues around the king inside the court, but to really live in a little bit performatic performance way in present time, these moments, to make the past really lively. What is not so often in cinema, because when you deal with period films, usually we have so many ideas already in our minds, or so many cliches, or not cliches, just ideas of what happened and how it happened, that often we have too respect in some sense for the past or for our knowledge about the past, and then it lacks a little bit this lively, this lively feeling. And here, well, it helped a little bit to have this unity of time, space, action, to really be able, and the way we shoot, with always 3 cameras, making variations on the scenes, always, trying to stop the minimum possible, only for the change of life, slightly change of costume, but to really, live this death, or this agony, in a similar way that it should have happened in the past.
So for Jean-Pierre, my question is this is for you as an actor more a matter of living this experience than, and what's the dividing line between living the experience and acting?
Quelle est la ligne qui divise entre vivre cette expérience ou jouer cette expérience? Où est la séparation?
La séparation. Il n'y a pas de séparation précisément dans ce film-là précisément.
There's no line or separation in this film.
À partir du moment où Albert Serra m'a demandé de jouer la mort de Louis XIV, avec un dispositif qui me filmait pendant 1 mois avec 3 caméras simultanément. À l'intérieur de ce dispositif, j'étais pris moi-même, personnellement, au piège de ma propre mort en jouant celle de Louis XIV, ce qui illustre la phrase de Jean Cocteau que le cinéma est le seul art qui filme la mort au travail. Et effectivement, c'est ma propre mort qui était en train de filmer Albert Serra pendant que je jouais celle de Louis XIV. Maintenant, ce que je peux ajouter, c'est que ce genre d'expérience est une expérience dont on ne sort pas exactement intact et que je suis très différent dans mes rapports à ma propre vie et à ma propre mort après une expérience pareille.
From the moment that Albert Serra asked me to act in this film, and that I was in a position where I was being filmed with 3 cameras in a particular one location, I became trapped within an experience that almost simultaneously was the experience of my own death. And it illustrates the quote from Jean Cocteau, si vous pouvez
Le cinéma est le seul art
The cinema is the only art
qui puisse filmer la mort au travail.
that can film,
Capturer
that can capture death
la mort au travail.
at work.
Et dans le dispositif de Serra, c'était ma propre vie et ma propre mort qui était en train de se jouer pendant que j'incarnais le personnage de Louis XIV.
So in Sarah's shoot, it was my own death that was being filmed while I was interpreting
C'était par
Louis
conséquent-
XIV's death.
Par conséquent, une expérience absolument unique et très personnelle et très intime que l'on peut voir vivre sur l'écran aujourd'hui et que ça me, voilà, et que je ne vois pas un autre acteur pouvant aller aussi profondément dans la ressemblance, dans les intensités de la représentation de sa propre mort que moi dans le film de Serra.
It's a completely unique, intimate, and personal experience to do this film, to be filmed in such a way, and I can't imagine of another actor that could go to the extent to go to such depth in interpreting a character and the death of Louis XIV as I did.
Je pense que c'est bien ça que vous avez vu.
I believe that that's what you saw.
Because the way, Jean-Pierre worked at that moment, it was interesting because it was parallel to what I said before, trying to live the thing in present because of his innocence, Because, even if he, knew a lot about Louis XIV and he was really interested in the character, at the end there is some kind of innocence inside him that makes this alive, that makes this not a representation, even if in the film there is a lot of representation because he's in front of the court and, the film is about that, about how do you deal with death in intimacy, in real intimacy, but also in front of other people, where how this experience change or, it's not exactly the same. But I love the way he escaped cliché, but totally naturally, in a way that, I don't know, for me it was also a surprise because, it appeared a little bit by luck. And I think it's due to this total innocence, total absence of, I don't know, of really feeling things in that moment, and that's all.
A few questions from the audience. Jim?
Thank you, and thank you. A beautiful film. I'd like you to talk about the crafting of the film, how the cameras were used, how the lighting was set, how long, how many times you took a scene, did you repeat it? I have no sense of that because it all was in the moment for me so beautifully. So how did you do that?
Okay. Well, one of the main points I had in my mind at the beginning, apart from, from the practical point of view, was to really be able to shoot in some kind of continuity. Obviously, there is some changing of light and some changing of costumes and new characters appear, different actions. But with the main idea that, we were really in a close-up of the king, and the things could be interchangeable. The scenes, the moments, everything, could be used afterwards in the edit. In a very free way. And in fact, in the last 45 minutes of the film, it's a little bit that, because you see some shot, then there is another shot, but there is new people, and you don't know exactly if the other people disappear because there is some ambiguous continuity on the sound. So there is a little bit, how to say it, a flu, in English, a flu.
Une grippe?
No, flu.
En français, flou.
Oh, c'est fuzzy.
Fuzzy, no, on time. So this was one of the, and for this reason we decided to put some obviously fixed light with the slight changes or changes that should be done as fast as possible, in order not to lose this continuity and this spirit on, because it's quite fragile to get always moving moments from the face, or it's not so easy. I mean it happens suddenly and then it disappears. So to keep a little bit these beautiful moments, these movements that are really small, because just some the way he look at the people, the way he says some small sentence, or so the idea was to try to put it as longer as possible, and the continuity on the shooting with the 3 cameras all the time, and almost not repeating the same things. We repeat it, but always with variations, coming back to previous scenes without a stop. Really to live in this, I don't know, in this non-stop, the never-ending, a little bit confusing, last days of his life. And it corresponds a little bit in the last part of the film to the way maybe somebody that is going to die, that is already very ill, perceive time. This is quite important on the film in the second part, the way that it should be smooth because it's very repetitive. So if the rhythm and the way we change, the actors and the action in the second part, because, all the repetitions, water and more water and whatever, it's full of repetitions. So if the edit or of this change of the use of the time at that moment was not very smooth, it could be very boring in some sense. And we were a little bit surprised to reach a point that the film is quite repetitive at the end, but not boring. And people enjoy it. So we were happy of that because we really, delivered the film to Cannes Film Festival the last days, and we didn't know what to expect, and we couldn't even check it with other people, watching the film. Or it was just a very intense work. But the idea was to work on total continuity, as if it was a performance, as the original. Okay, with the lights it's difficult because it's not so easy to prepare light for 3 cameras. For the reason people do not want to shoot with 3 cameras because for 2 it's already difficult, but imagine for 3. But then I always gave a lot of freedom to cameraman to try to find their best position. We communicate by scenes in a very, fast way, and then they try to find a way to find a good angle for each camera. What is, I said, not always possible.
Thank you. From Mr. Léaud, merely I'm in awe of your performance, and I am grateful for both this and your body of work entirely. From Mr. Serra, just a question. With Birdsong, when you were working with sort of a mythological, apocryphal, I don't want to use the word history with it, but with something that people are generally aware of, but there's not exacting details. And then with Story of My Death, when you had sort of a fusion of the fictional and the fantastic and, historical persons. With this film, with there being such a preserved historical record of the final days of Louis XIV, was that liberating or binding compared to your previous 2 films?
It was not liberating because, I don't know, because I always knew that the magic of the film will be him, I mean, it was, I didn't feel, I feel responsible in the way that, the director is responsible for the performance of the actor, but in some sense, I knew that these things were not so important, if it was more historically faithful or not, or even some, I knew that the film will be beautiful at the plastic level and all these things, and it was quite well done on the decor. I was there, and really I wanted an organic decor that you really feel that the king is there on the bed, lying on the bed, and he really appropriates the space. All this organic approach, for me, I think it was easy to get. Well, not easy, but it's difficult because it was a low-budget film, and for the decor, for the light, it's not so easy, but okay. But then the magic, the final touch, it's it's him who puts that on the screen. So I don't know. I think it's part of this season. Maybe there is also what he said a little bit, because I always work. I am not always focused on the character. I am always focused when I work with actors in the person, also in the actor. That is the person feeling or being filmed with the conscious that he's filmed, and then the character. Okay, the character is important. It's what we see on the screen. But when you play a little bit with the actor and the person, and we try to, I don't know, when you deal with that because for me it was very important, the relation with Jean-Pierre that was, based on friendship, but in a very natural way. We didn't know a lot. We met, I don't know, maybe 5 times before, or 6 or 7, but it was not. So for me, the way, that from the human point of view, we work. For me, I think, and something of that is on the film also. I don't know in which way, but it was my obsession to put some, I don't know, some density, on the way he performs. And I think that at the end he reached this beautiful point. It's difficult because it's about also this idea of shooting non-stop, a lot of days, and slowly and gradually, selecting the good things, the things you really love. In fact, my methodology was a little bit based always in non-communication with actors, non-communication with technicians. So I'm a little bit a spectator of my own film during the shooting. But as the amount, it's like a magma, the amount of this methodology, it's so big at the end and it's so powerful that you have to, with the edit, really being critically, minded in the edit, and if these beautiful things are in the material, you will find it.
So
À propos de ce que vient de parler M. Serra, ce que vous voyez du montage, ce que vous voyez sur l'écran, c'est ce qu'il reste de tout le texte que j'avais à dire, tiré des moments de la mort de Louis XIV par Saint-Simon, qui ont été au montage complètement évacués, et il ne reste plus que l'intensité du personnage humain vivant sa propre mort, moi-même, dans le personnage de Louis XIV, ce qui ne donne qu'une suite d'intensité de ce que j'avais à dire et qui ne se dit pas et qui ne se voit pas sur l'écran. Il ne reste que l'intensité de la présence. Si j'ai bien compris ce qui est assez au montage.
In terms of
On
what,
n'entend plus que des râles et des essoufflements et on voit un face-à-face perpétuel avec la mort. Voilà.
in terms of what Mr. Serra is saying, the text was entirely pulled from Saint-Simon's memoirs and what Louis XIV had actually said. However, in editing, all of that was eradicated, and what you're left with is what precedes the words or succeeds them, and it's the intensity. You're left with the incredible intensity of the moments and the process of the death of Louis XIV.
In fact, was Jean Duchet, a French critic, who said about my previous films that they are based in the dramaturgy, not in the dramaturgy of action, but in the dramaturgy of presence. And I think that this film exemplifies even better this thing, that all the dramaturgy of the film, it's like created naturally because of a presence in the center. This is the presence of Jean-Pierre in the center. And obviously, there is also a natural dramaturgy when somebody is reaching the death. No, it's approaching the death. It creates naturally, a drama. So here, to put him in the center and to wait a little bit, this was my point, that this dramaturgy was created as naturally as possible. Because of the consequence of the slightest consequence of the most, a small gesture or a small word or, the resonance in all the room. And for this reason, I avoid the political thing, because I could have shot it. In fact, I shoot one scene or two outside the room, about with the political things around the death of the king and, But then there I said, what's the point of the interest of this,
But that's present in the film as it is anyway.
Sorry?
That's present, the politics around the death of the king.
Yes,
are
a
still
little
there
bit,
in
a
the
little
film.
bit. For example, when he talks about he says in fact very important things when he talks with the baby. He said that, it shouldn't, because the state is almost in bankruptcy. So at that moment it became in bankruptcy afterwards. So it says some strange political advice coming from the most powerful man in the world. So I don't know. This was the crucial point of the film, that the absolute power, again facing the total impotence of illness and of useless doctors. But put some kind of irony that I really love on the film, all the doctor problem, to imagine that even the richest people or the most powerful people in the world have bad doctors is also a wonderful idea for the rest of us.
There was a moment in the film where I felt that I in the audience was cast as death coming to the king. That was when you were looking right at us. And I was very happy that the film did not stop there, and that he didn't die at that moment, but died a bit later. Is that something that you were thinking of at that moment?
I don't know. We shoot this moment in concrete, we shoot it 2 or 3 times. And it was because Jean-Pierre wanted it also spontaneously always. He wanted to listen to some music, and he wanted Monteverdi, but we didn't have Monteverdi, and I said, we put Mozart. Mozart, it's not chronological. From the chronological point of view, obviously was born after the death of Louis XIV. But I don't know. Then we shoot it, as always, and then in the edit, I saw that usually when somebody looks at the camera, you know, puts you out of the film, no? Because suddenly you realize that this is a film, no? And so, but here I don't know why it worked, because it looked like it's what you said a little bit, that, you know, you're facing death, and you don't know if it's your death or, you know, the death of the king. It's like a dialogue, no? And paradoxically, with this scene, when they look at you, you get in more in the film. You get more in the film. That going out, what is usual in this kind of thing. So for me, it was also a mystery. And okay, then some people in Cannes, that I forgot obviously, said,
En ce qui me concerne, dans le jeu et à la sortie du film, je suis sorti très différent après le tournage, justement, dans ma conception de la vie et de la mort, parce que je suis très investi dans le personnage, et que très précisément, pour répondre à cette jeune femme, j'ai pensé en moi-même que la mort, c'était quelque chose qui était très difficile à jouer, mais c'était quelque chose dont il ne fallait pas avoir peur et que l'on devait la voir venir vers soi. Voilà.
Okay, in terms of what
C'est ce qu'elle a ressenti.
in terms of what you felt, I can understand that, and I felt something similar because when I came out after the shooting of the film, I also had this feeling that, you know, you were staring straight at death, and that you didn't know if you were experiencing it or seeing it, and that you had to not be afraid of it and let it come towards you.
Voilà, c'est ce qu'elle a ressenti et c'est ce que j'ai ressenti pendant que je jouais.
That's what you felt. That's what I felt when I was acting.
Albert, you were going to add something about a reaction in Cannes to...
well, not also. I mean, what is beautiful is what you said in the catalog of the festival. You know, that was also my point about the subject of death, because sometimes it's very grave. No, it's a very important moment, and usually it's done in a very dramatic way. You know, death as the last affirmation of life, or the last gesture of life, or the last resume of life, or whatever. But here, I like the idea also that it was closer of what I have experienced in my own life. That, you know, the banality of death in itself. It's very beautiful what you wrote in the catalog, that you said that. The banality of the court, the banality of all these, you know, representations around the king, but also the banality of the death in itself. And because it's, I don't know, I like the idea of the end of the film that, you know, gradually, slowly, he doesn't move, he moves a little bit less, not the legs, then not the arms, and then he's dead, but you don't know exactly when he dies, you know? What is very close to what I experienced with my grandparents and with some relatives. They are there and suddenly they are not there, and that's all, you know. And everything keeps on in the same, I know, everybody else is in the same place doing the same thing, and, you know, and this mix, no, of really, you know, transcendent approach of death, but also the banal part of death. I think that I wanted to balance a little bit that in the film.
Other than Saint-Simon memoirs, did you use any other source material for these final days of Louis XIV? And how much of your shooting was done in Portugal?
What's the last question?
How much of the shoot was in Portugal?
We use some other sources that are not as interesting from the literary point of view, which is Journal de Danjou, that are courtesans of that time. Also the doctor's reports.
Yeah. But visual sources you used. Visual sources.
No, only written sources.
Yes.
This was but complementary. I mean, essentially, what explains Saint-Simon, it's what all the other people explain more or less in the same way. Then we had some poetic license, some scenes that are not in the historical truth, but they are funny and closer. For example, when the main doctor decides, ask Jean-Pierre, that is already almost dying, to prosecute the other doctor, and says that the other doctor is the responsible of the, you know, of all the problems of the king, blah, blah, blah. This was not historically true, or we don't know. And we didn't put. And some other things, for example, at the beginning, the eccentric things with the eyes that you don't know exactly what they are doing with the fake eyes. Some. But in general, we follow quite closely what is historically true. And then in Portugal, we shoot 4 days there, 5 days, because it was a Portuguese co-production, and we shoot there in a palace, and there is some scenes where we see a little bit the king walking in the middle of a palace, then he is reading a book, and some scenes of the garden, and then we cut it at the beginning, because we just put one shot. But, I don't know, it was complementary shooting in Portugal. Because in France it was very difficult because we only had the room and a little bit the garden. So then we used some gardens in there and the wider shot of the palace.
You mentioned in the film Arnau de Vilanova, and I think that you have mentioned or have referenced him before in your work. I don't know if I'm wrong, but why did you choose to introduce it?
Well, the reference is not historically true, but the character, the main character, it is that they pick up by chance charlatan. No, charlatan it's English. Charlatan. That when he was really ill, it's true. That came from Marseille, and when everybody was desperate, and they tried some absurd remedies. And okay, this is historical truth. And we put some reference just to put it more a little bit eccentric, because there was this fight that I love, and it was, as you said, I don't remember exactly if the guy, but the subject, it was in my previous film, this fight between, these two different approach on medicine and on life in general. The most esoteric one, the most that believes in, that there is some energy, that maybe can have important influence, and another more, more scientific and classical approach. So this fight, I like this idea with the doctors at that time because, the scientific approach was nothing. Nowadays, okay, the scientific approach won, no? We can put it this way. But at that time, it was not so clear, because everything was like esoteric. And in fact, for example, I read on the internet one website afterwards the shooting that said that it was a website that said most dangerous doctors in history, and this Fagon was number 2. So, I mean, now the scientific knowledge at that time was nothing. Completely. And well, this was a beautiful and ironic, but historically true. An ironic approach, but historically true.
Thank you very much, Albert. And thank you, Jean-Pierre.
Merci.